Okay, so in this video I'm going to show how to create a canopy using Kangaroo and a form finding methodology using Kangaroo as a physics simulator inside Grasshopper. And the idea is to create a canopy that sits in between these three buildings that has this edge and that also has kind of a hole in the middle here for maybe a column or something like that. So I'm going to start by inputting these curves into Grasshopper using a curve component and then selecting the curve and right click set one curve, and then the same for the middle ones. From these edge curves I'm going to create a surface. So I'm going to use a boundary surface component here, and then a split surface component to cut a hole from there. Here I am going to use a list item to get the first element, which will be this one. And note that I always want to work with this one on, so I can just see the element that I am touching here. So once I have that, I will transform that into a mesh with this quad remesh component. And now I have the starting point to use that mesh in my physics simulator. I'm going to just place the main solver component here. I'm just going to use the normal solver here from Kangaroo. And I am going to also put a merge component here that will kind of gather all the goals and elements that I will use as in my physics simulator. For example, the mesh, where the loads are, and also some of the boundary conditions of that simulation. Okay, so from first thing that I want to set up is that I want to be able to see the mesh. So I will use a show component that will be my first target here in the simulation. I will also use a bottom here to reset the simulation whenever I want, and I'm also going to use a Boolean toggle here to just not have it running all the time, otherwise it's just very intensive and it gets slow if we have this running while we do changes. So one of the things that I want to do now is to define all the edges of the mesh as the anchor points for the simulation. So I'm going to do that by using this curve and dividing that curve into some points. I'm just gonna set a slider here. I'm gonna have many anchor points, so I'm just gonna set that very to a high number there, maybe just 100. That's fine. And these points here, I want to map them into the mesh, because sometimes when you use these points as the anchor points directly, you get some errors because Kangaroo doesn't recognize them as part of the mesh. So I'm going to use a point closest point component, and I'm going to get all the elements from this mesh, the construct mesh, so that I can find what is the closest points to this one from the points from this mesh. So I am going to do this and this to get the closest points. So now I have more. So now I'm sure that Kangaroo will recognize these anchor points as part of the mesh. Okay, now I have my anchor points. The next thing that I will do is to add an edge length component. I think it was like vertex. I want to use this one, but not now. This one, edge length component from the mesh again. And what this one do is that it allows the mesh to stretch based on a length factor. So I'm gonna constrain that to 0.5 to 1. Maybe I will adjust that later. This will also be one of the goals here. And I'm going to add uniform load to everything on the mesh. No, that was not the one that I wanted to. Just a normal load component. So in all the points of the mesh, I'm just going to use a load that will affect all of the points in the mesh. And this force will be upwards. And so I will just control the how big that load is here with another slider. And this will also be one of the goals here. Okay, so I have again my edge loads, my anchor points here. I also will use this one as an anchor point. So remember, I only have the ones in the edges, but I also want to have an anchor point here. So I'm gonna do that. So I'm just gonna copy this one, and maybe I don't need that many anchor points for the middle one because it's a small curve. So I'm just gonna decrease this number here. And I also want to map these points into the mesh. So I'm gonna copy this one here and then search these points. Okay, now that I have those, I can add an anchor point here. And one thing that I want to do is I want this to kind of push it even downwards. So I'm going to, you see that here in the anchor there's like points and targets. So I'm actually going to move those points down so that the mesh kind of tends to go a bit down there. So I'm going to use a move component here and then use a Z unit here. Oh, I forgot that I want to move it down here, so I'm just going to set the minimum here to -3 meters. I think I'm working in meters in my... These units will relate to whatever units you define in your Rhino file. Okay, so that will be the target. So basically, one of the targets would be that these points here in the mesh will tend to move downwards. Okay, so then I will also put these anchor points here, and I will reset this one, and then I can run the first simulation. Okay, so then obviously the force is just a bit too much, so I'm gonna decrease this number. And maybe before I do that, I will turn this off. So I'm gonna really decrease this one to see what the effect of that will be. Okay, yeah, I think this is closer to what I was looking for. Let's look at it in side view. Yeah, so I was looking for this slight curve upwards, and then it kind of goes down in the center. I want to kind of see the output in a better way here, so I'm just going to look at what the outputs here are. There are a lot of null elements, which are the points, so I'm just going to get rid of those. Okay, what I did is I just got the mesh and then got the edges, and things seem to be working correctly there. And then one thing that you can do is, of course, now that this is parametric, you can also make this one go a bit down as much as you want, and also maybe adjust things. I want to make this one smaller maybe, so I will just work on making those small changes. So this one was the original circle here, I'm just going to scale it here from the center, and I can get the center with an area component. I'm going to add a slider here. And then again, I'm going to just turn this off before I make any changes here. Okay, maybe that's too much. Okay, I'm gonna reset that one and then run it again. Yeah, so this was kind of closer to what I was looking for. You can also increase the resolution of the initial mesh by adding a settings here. So the settings is somewhere here, quadro mesh settings, if you want to change the resolution of that mesh. And then once you have the mesh, of course, you can do things like use another components from Weaver to do some more manipulation of the mesh. So here you get the edges, and then for instance, Weaver frames, you can get the mesh, the kind of get some nice, oh no, this one. You can get some nice frames from there. I think this is one. Something like that, which already gives a much better appearance of the mesh. Okay, that was it.